Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we continue with Canto 10, Chapter 46, and there are three texts for today, 44, 45, and 46, and 44 is on the board. Evam nishasa bruvator vyatita Nandasya Krsnarcana Rajan Gopya Samutaya Nirupya Dipan Bastun Sambayarche Dadini Amantan Evam nishasa bruvator vyatita Nandasya Krsnarcana Rajan Gopya Samutaya Nirupya Dipan Vastun Samabhyayarcha Dadini Amantan Evam nishasa bruvato vyatita Nandasya Krsnarcana Rajan Gopya Samutaya Nirupya Dipan Vastun Samabhyayarcha Dadini Amantan Nishasa Bruvato Vyatita Nandasya Krsnarcana Rajan Gopya Samutaya Nirupya Dipan Vastun Samabhyayarcha Amantan. Okay, so the word for word, evam, in this way, nisha, the night, sa, that, bruvato, as they were both speaking, vyatita, was finished, Nandasya, Nanda Maharaj, Krsnarcana, and the servant of Krishna, Uddhava. Rajan, O king, Parikshit. Gopya, the cowherd woman. Samutaya, rising from sleep. Nirupya, lighting. Dipan, lamps. Vastun, the domestic deities. Samabhyayarcha, worshipping. Dadini, curds. Amantan, churned. So the translation for text 44 is as follows. This is by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. While Krishna's messenger continued speaking with Nanda, the night ended, O king. The woman of the cowherd village rose from bed and, lighting lamps, worshipped their household deities. Then they began churning the yogurt into butter. And text 45. Tadipar mandbir vireju rajur vikar shad puja kankana shraja chatanitambastana hara kandala tvishad kapola runa kula umanana. And the translation for text 45. As they pulled on the churning ropes with their bangled arms, the women of Raja shone with the splendor of their jewels, which reflected the lamp's light. Their hips, breasts, and necklaces moved about, and their faces, anointed with reddish kunkun, glowed radiantly with the luster of their earrings reflecting from their cheeks. And text 46. Udgaya tinam arasindalochanam rajangananan divam ashprishadvanihi danascha nirmantana shabda mishrito nirasyate yena nishanamangalam. And the translation for text 46. As the ladies of Raja loudly sang the glories of lotus-eyed Krishna, their songs blended with the sound of their churning, ascended to the sky and dissipated all inauspiciousness in every direction. And this particular verse has a one-line purport. So purport, the gopis were absorbed in thought of Krishna and were thus feeling his presence. Therefore, they could joyfully sing. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurinmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swak Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamlam Shri Guru Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupa Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragutam Tatam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitam Sha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavan Ishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyas Chakripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Romapada Swami Iti Namine Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. There are three verses, but the emphasis is going to be on the first of the three verses, text 44. Because it has a very extensive purport by one of the Acharyas, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And it's interesting because he takes the whole description that's given there, but takes it in a completely different direction. So I'm going to look at how he's exploring the text, and I'll read the text again, which is very descriptive, but as I say, he takes it in a completely different direction. So, text 44 translation. While Krishna's messenger continued speaking with Nanda, The night ended, O king. The women of the cowherd village rose from bed and, lighting lamps, worshipped their household deities. Then they began churning the yogurt into butter. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on this particular text, he states the following. So I'm quoting him. Though the entire night passed in discussion, so that's a discussion between Uddhava and Nanda Maharaj, Uddhava could not pacify Nanda and Yasoda, nor get them to accept his advice. So that's the statement by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He's summarizing what was the conclusion through the night's discussion. So if we backtrack, there was a description of how Nanda Maharaj, being completely attached to Krishna by remembering the Lord's majesty, still did not have his personal relationship with Krishna weaken. Because that's part of why there's a statement made by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that Uddhava could not get Nanda and Yasoda to accept his advice. So I'm going to explore this. Now, this particular backtracking that I'm doing that highlights something of Nanda Maharaj's relationship with Krishna. I'm quoting from the Bhagavatam. That remembrance was of Krishna and Balaram easily destroying demons like Pralamba, Dhenuka, Trinavarta, and Baka. So this is one of the things that Nanda Maharaj, a little while back, had been remembering in his recount to Uddhava. And particularly his personal relationship with Krishna didn't weaken. So this is the interesting point, despite whatever Uddhava had to say. And Srila Sukadeva Goswami, earlier on in the Bhagavatam, he says this of Nanda Maharaj, thus intensely remembering Krishna again and again. Nanda Maharaj, his mind completely attached to the Lord, felt extreme anxiety and fell silent, overcome by the strength of his love. So that's actually where Nanda Maharaj's thinking is. So this was from the 27th verse in this chapter. So there's an inability to move past his own relationship with Krishna. And this we come to understand now at this point, which is the end of the discussion with Uddhava. Even with Uddhava's advice, and so this was Uddhava's advice, that Supreme Lord, so he's referring to Krishna, the little son of Nanda Maharaj, is certainly not your son alone. Rather, being the Lord, he is the son, father, and mother of everyone. So this is the advice the father of Krishna is receiving from Uddhava. And it is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur who gives insight into the thinking of Nanda Maharaj on this point. Because imagine, he's the father of Krishna, he's remembering these extraordinary deeds of his little son, but he's completely caught up in feeling anxious because his son has now gone to Mathura, his little son, who's now 11 years old. And he's overcome with the loving feelings he has for his son. So, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives some insight into how Nanda Maharaj was processing what he's hearing from Uddhava. So he's just heard this extraordinary statement, "You're not alone, his father." In fact, he's not your son alone. He's the son of many. And rather than being the Lord, he's the son, the father and the mother of everyone. So that's what he's hearing about his little son that he's just seen as his son. And this is how then Nanda Maharaj has to process this information. So, so this is what he's thinking. Uddhava wants to enlighten us by saying that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Do we not know that? At Krishna's name-giving ceremony, I heard Garga Muni say, your son will be equal to Narayan in qualities. Indeed, who else is there more equal to Narayan than Krishna? So he's doing an analysis of what he's hearing. Therefore, from Garga Muni, we learned that our son is Narayan. Besides that, we personally experienced our son to be Narayan when he killed Putana, Aga, and Baka, lifted Govardhan Hill, stopped the forest fire, and made the ruler of Varuna Loka offer respects. Certainly, I realize that Krishna is Narayan, the super soul and the supreme Brahman. Nevertheless, nothing inhibits me from thinking of Krishna as our son. So he does an analysis. He acknowledges what he's hearing from Uddhava. He's saying, yes, we actually even got evidence for this. Right in his birth ceremony, the officiating priest of the family said to them, you know, your son's going to have qualities like those of Narayan. And he's saying, well, of course I understand that. Who better than Krishna to have be pretty much like Narayan? In fact, he is Narayan. But I actually can't stop myself from seeing him as my son. So for Nanda Maharaj, the culmination of this reasoning process does acknowledge Uddhava's stating that nothing can be said to exist independent of Lord Achyuta, because that was one of the statements that was discussed, I think it was yesterday. Nothing heard or seen, nothing of the past, present, or future, nothing moving or non-moving, great or small. So nothing can be existing independent of Lord Krishna. So Nanda Maharaj is acknowledging this. He's thinking, he indeed is everything, for he's the Supreme Soul. He's acknowledging it. So the culmination of his reasoning, however, is Garga Muni's words. And this is very interesting. What he's remembering is these particular words. Nanda, the son of yours. So out of everything that Garga Muni had said, he's remembering Nanda, the son of yours. Even though the complete statement of Garga Muni had been the following, and I'm going to read the full statement. This is actually what was said to Nanda Maharaj, even though he's just remembering that phrase. In conclusion, this is Garga Muni speaking at the time of the birth ceremony of Krishna. In conclusion, therefore, O Nanda Maharaj, this child of yours is as good as Narayan. In his transcendental qualities, opulence, name, fame, and influence, he's exactly like Narayan. You should raise this boy very carefully and very cautiously. So interestingly, although the statement by Garga Muni to Nanda Maharaj at that time, if you take it literally, you could question it, because actually Lord Narayan has no equal. No one is equal to him, and no one is greater than he is. And this actually is stated, Srila Prabhupada draws from a particular verse. It's from one of the Upanishads, and I'm going to read the verse and then the translation, because it actually then makes you question what Garga Muni has just said. Yastu Narayanam Devam Brahmam Rudrachi Daivatai Samatve Naiva Viksheta prasanadi shave dhruvam. One who equates Narayan even with great exalted demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma is a Pashandi or an agnostic. No one can equal Narayan. So this is the statement from one of the Upanishads. And Gargamuni is telling Nanda Maharaj, actually, your son is equal in qualities to Narayan. But we've just heard that somebody who actually equates anyone to Narayan is an agnostic. So Nanda had understood what Gargamuni was impressing upon him. And what he understood is, was his understanding at that time. Your worshipful deity Narayan is so pleased with you that he has sent you a son almost equal to him in qualifications. And he's understanding, if you can protect this child very cautiously as Narayan always protects you, the child will be as good as Narayan. So that is what he understood. Very simple understanding. It's going to be dependent on him looking after his little son so well. Then his little son will be as good as Narayan. So the responsibility rests with him. So Nanda Maharaj, he explains his thinking. And this is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Even though Krishna may be the Supreme Lord, we do not think of him as an object of worship. So this is very interesting. He's like putting it across clearly what his understanding is. We simply think of Krishna as our son and find satisfaction by offering him the remnants of our chewed betel nut. Imagine. If he were not our son, our minds would not be satisfied. So this is how he's reasoning. This little boy, he has to be our son. Because actually he's accepting, I chew some betel nuts and I give him the remnants and he happily takes it. He has to be my son. And also, I'm experiencing satisfaction in my mind from dealing with him. He must be my son. So this satisfaction that Nanda Maharaj is referring to is explained as ecstatic love for Krishna, the Supreme Person, that develops into a relationship of parenthood. And then that ecstatic love becomes firmly established in that role where one sees oneself as a parent in relation to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is called Vatsalya Ras. So it's a particular mallow, a certain mood in relationship to Krishna and seeing oneself in a certain role. And the main characteristic of this parental love, Vatsalya Ras, the standard of devotional service, is mercy and compassion towards Krishna. So that's the defining characteristic. If one is developing one's loving relationship with Krishna and comes to take, in a much further along point in one's devotional life, when one's quite purified, one comes to take on this mood, or one may take on this particular mood of a parental mood in relation to Krishna. And that parental mood has an accompanying mood of feeling merciful towards Krishna. So it's not that one's waiting for mercy from Krishna, but one is feeling merciful towards him. And one's feeling compassionate towards him. There's a nice couple in our community who has a little 2.5-year-old boy. And the little boy has a very conscious and attentive mood to his parents and to other adults. So I was witnessing, how do I feel when I'm observing this little boy? And it's a kind of parental mood. You feel kindness, compassion, because there's a little body, and the little body is, looking for approval from the parent, from the adult figure. So immediately you feel great kindness, compassion towards that little body. So this is that mood of parental love. Of course, it's in relation to Krishna that we're discussing here. So it's on a very elevated plane, and it's on a spiritual plane. It's not like mundane love. I'm describing, a simple situation in a material setting of experiencing that kind of emotion, but this is very elevated emotion. So this mercy and compassion towards Krishna, that somebody with this parental, feeling themselves in a parental role towards Krishna, and experiencing this mercy and compassion, it has a particular name in Sanskrit. It's anuraga. And I was drawing from a book by Dhanuraj Swami called Waves of Devotion. And he mentioned something that you can equate to the satisfaction in the mind that Nanda Maharaj is presenting as part of his argument for why Krishna has to just be his son. That satisfaction of the mind is as follows. Before Krishna's birth, he says, we could meditate on Narayan. So he's referring to his deities, household deity, our family deity. But now, as soon as we meditate on Narayan, our family deity, immediately Narayan appears directly in front of us. So that's what he's experiencing. So meaning the meditation on the deity produces the form of Narayan in front of them. So they're understanding there is this non-difference between Narayan in meditation and Krishna being personally present in front of them. So this is Nanda Maharaj. This is a sign of the satisfaction in our minds. So by constantly engaging the mind in the transcendental service of the Lord, one is steadily controlling the mind. And this is given in a purport in Bhagavad Gita 6:37. And in fact, one's also receiving the result of one's bhakti yoga practice. The mind's coming steadily under control. So an example is given of the bhakti of Nanda Maharaj. And this, as I mentioned, I found in the Waves of Devotion by Dhanuraj Swami. So here's an example of how Nanda Maharaj is experiencing the satisfaction in the mind. The mind is so steady, so controlled. When Krishna was a baby, one day he was walking in the courtyard, capturing the finger of his father. And because he could not walk steadily, he appeared to be almost falling down. While Nanda Maharaj was giving protection to his transcendental son in this way, all of a sudden there were drops of tears in his eyes and he became overwhelmed with joy. So this thinking of Krishna as his son rather than as an object of worship, because that's the interesting thing. He just told us that he's meditating on his deity and there it's Narayan appears in front of him. So Krishna's in front of him. But at the same time, he's explaining why he doesn't think of Krishna as an object of worship. He thinks of his household deity as an object of worship, but not Krishna. And his not thinking of Krishna, of anything other than as his son, is that the childhood age of Krishna, this Kaumara age, 1 to 5 years old, or birth through 5 years, it's stimulating his parental love. And this is what happens with this parental role, there's stimulants for that ecstatic love in the parental role. So, of course, this is discussing spiritual emotion. It's not mundane emotion. So other things that stimulate this kind of ecstatic love in the parental role are seeing the childish dress of Krishna, movements of the child, the sweet words spoken by the child, the nice smiling, and various forms of childish play. So all these things stimulate that love in the parental role. And the example that I read, you saw it was something to do with the movements of the child. Krishna is sort of stumbling. He's, how children, when they're learning to walk, they sort of fall down frequently. So his legs are not strong enough to hold him, and he's falling down, and he's holding on by his full hand just to his father's little finger. Such a small little body. So this is one of those occasions that ecstatic love that Nanda Maharaj, in his very purified state, he's experiencing towards Krishna, because suddenly, tears shoot out of his eyes. So, regular material tears, they trickle down the cheeks, but transcendental tears, they shoot out. So it's not sadness, like trickling down, it's shooting out ecstatically. So Srila Rupa Goswami, he gives a description of the form, activities, and ornaments of Krishna in this birth through 5 years old. And these are things that are stimulating that love. So I'm going to take one of them, and it's with regard to Krishna's ornaments, how this even stimulates this parental love. So here's the description. When Nanda Maharaj saw the beauty of child Krishna with tiger nails on his chest, he never became satiated by the child's beauty. So the nails of tigers were put into gold, and then it was put as a necklace on Krishna, and it was meant to act as like a talisman, a protection for the child. So this is actually a stimulant for parental love, seeing this protective necklace of tiger's nails on Krishna's chest. It would stimulate Nanda Maharaj, seeing the beauty of Krishna. And I was thinking about this, and it came to my mind, in the country I'm from, or where I took birth, there's a segment of the population that are the Kshatriyas in the country. So they're the warriors, and historically they've fought wars. It's the Zulu people. So the common thing in the Zulu people, they decorate themselves and the little children with porcupine quills around the neck. So they have necklaces with porcupine quills. So these very sharp porcupine quills, it's supposed to enhance beauty as well. So I was relating to the tiger nails in the gold necklace. Now, Nanda Maharaj, he further argues, and his further argument is, Krishna's own realization in this matter is also proof that we are his parents. Because, he's honing in on this point. He doesn't want to let go. Uddhava has presented that Krishna is the son of many. In fact, he's the father and mother and son of numerous entities in the world. And Nanda Maharaj won't move from this position, but it doesn't change the fact that he's my son. So here he's presenting another argument. Krishna's own realization in this matter is also proof that we are his parents. We have seen many times that his face becomes sad if we don't pamper him by offering him remnants of our chewed betel nut. Lift him up on our laps, embrace him, kiss him, and so forth. So Nanda Maharaj is continuing. Even Krishna is responding like our child. His face shows sadness if we don't, give the physical embraces and the physical comfort, or if we don't offer him something that's coming from our mouth, the true betel nut. He uses that example several times. So the example that Nanda Maharaj gives is of Yasoda tying up Krishna to really illustrate this point that Krishna himself realizes that he's the son of Nanda and Yasoda. So this is how he explains it. When Lord Krishna sees his mother stick in hand, he very quickly gets down from the top of the mortar and begins to flee as if very much afraid. Although yogis tried to capture him as Paramatma by meditation, meaning they try to capture Krishna within the heart as Paramatma, desiring to enter into the effulgence of the Lord with great austerities and penance, they failed to reach him. But Mother Yasoda, thinking the same personality of Godhead Krishna to be her son, began following Krishna to catch him. So this is the example that Nanda Maharaj is further giving to prove his argument that Krishna realizes he's the son of Yasoda Nanda. Just see this example. His mother's got a stick in her hand. She's running after him, and he's fleeing from her. He's experiencing fear. He's fleeing. So Nanda asks the question, if Yasoda were not his mother, how could she tie him up when he broke the yogurt pots? Because eventually she captures him, and she attempts to tie him, and constantly it's not proving possible. And then Krishna sees that she's actually perspiring and having a really hard time trying to do her punishment, and he allows himself to get tied up, and suddenly the rope is the right length. So Nanda's argument is, if Yasoda were not his mother, how could she tie him up? Meaning that it would have been impossible. Krishna would have prevented her from tying him up. And in fact, he didn't allow her to tie him up for quite some time. It was only when he saw that she was really perspiring and needing to do it that he was kind towards her and permitted himself to be tied up. But Nanda's using that as an argument that Krishna has the understanding that he's the son of Yasoda. That's why he's permitting himself to be tied up. Seeing him, and then he carries on, where he also brings in his parental role. Seeing him unhappy on being tied up, I freed him, and he smiled with happiness. So this is, again, it's that proof. He's understanding, I'm his father, I'm freeing him. He's smiling with happiness. If it were not a fact that we are Krishna's parents, then how could the Supreme Personality, the all-pervading Absolute, become bound by us? This is the question Nanda brings up, because he's firm in his argument. They're not seeing Krishna as an object to worship. It's even if he's feeling the satisfaction in his mind, he thinks of he's meditating on his deity, and then Krishna appears right before him, he's not actually treating Krishna like an object of worship. And so he's honing in, presenting all sorts of arguments why he is and Yasoda is the parent of Krishna. And Krishna also understands this. So Nanda Maharaj, and this is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and as I say, he's gone in this direction of a deep analysis of Nanda Maharaj's internal process. Nanda Maharaj, he reflects a little bit further, and he says, but this Uddhava is simply a child, even though he's very intelligent. He cannot fathom the depths of my son's heart, taking the literal meaning of Krishna's words as if they were Krishna's real thoughts. Uddhava has come from Mathura and given us this advice. But my son has clearly spoken correctly that he who renders devotion to me is my Father, and it is in his house I reside. So he's, again, taking something that it's actually knowledge of the scriptures that he's drawing on. And he's actually taking it that Krishna is saying, a person who has devotion to me, I reside in that person's house. In fact, that person is my Father. And this is actually what Krishna says. So I'm drawing from the scriptures now. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. So that is from Bhagavad Gita 15:19. That's actually what Krishna says. He doesn't specifically say, I reside in the house of the person who's performing devotional service to me, and that person is my Father. But he's saying, whoever doesn't doubt knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He knows everything. And therefore he engages himself fully in performing service to me. So, but Nanda Maharaj has simplified it. It's very personal. So, as opposed to speculating about the absolute truth or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one who knows him doesn't waste valuable time and engages directly in consciousness of Krishna, which is so clearly illustrated by Nanda Maharaj. So the devotional service of the Supreme Lord is what one then takes to as soon as one hears Krishna's teaching, such as the one that I've read. One accepts, oh, he must be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one takes to devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada argues that in this particular statement of Krishna that I've just read, whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. So Srila Prabhupada takes that statement and he argues that in the statement of Krishna, one is receiving the Vedic message from an authority, Krishna himself. So Krishna himself is clearly stating that everything should be heard from one source. So that's what Srila Prabhupada is pointing to. So if a person is engaged in Krishna consciousness, one can understand that that person has understood all this Vedic knowledge. I mean, even from that simple statement of Nanda Maharaj, you understand he's actually understood all Vedic knowledge. And simply by engaging in the devotional service of the Lord, it doesn't necessitate any other process for understanding the Supreme Lord. So performing activities in a kind of loving mood, wishing to serve Krishna, allows one to come to know him. And there's not something separate you have to do. And Krishna continues, the verse following on the one that Nanda Maharaj was drawing from, I believe, but putting it in his words. Krishna says, this is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. So, the understanding that this is the substance of the scriptures means that one will become intelligent and perfect in transcendental knowledge, meaning one understands that the source of knowledge is from the Supreme Person, and one is accepting that, and the substance that comes from that acceptance is taking to devotional life. And through taking to devotional life, one becomes intelligent and perfect in transcendental knowledge. So here's something of Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, the son of Mother Yasoda, is accessible to devotees engaged in spontaneous loving service, but he's not so easily accessible to mental speculators or to those striving for self-realization by severe austerities and penances, or to those who consider the body the self. So it means this very confidential knowledge, it only becomes revealed to one when one's taken to engaging in some service to Krishna, and it doesn't become revealed to one as long as one doesn't understand that one is the spirit soul and has a relationship to the Supreme Soul, Krishna, but rather is holding on to the concept that I am this particular body, not thinking of the spiritual dimension of the body. Yeah, and actually it's interesting, this idea that one can't realize Krishna by severe penances and austerities. Sometimes I remember early in my Krishna conscious life, I would hear of devotees who had decided that they were going to only exist on uncooked food stuff. So that's a kind of austerity. But, you know, if one's following what Srila Prabhupada has taught, then that devotional service has to do with not thinking so much of the austerities that you're creating yourself, but rather following the regulations that are given. Say the regulation is that, you know, you cook a fantastic, beautiful vegetarian meal for Krishna and you're offering that, and then you can also be eating fantastic, beautiful vegetarian meals. It doesn't say, you know, that, you know, one should undertake some very severe austerity, such as like severely restricting one's intake of food stuff. And in fact, that's what Srila Prabhupada is also pointing to. The striving for self-realization, realizing one's spiritual nature in relation to Krishna, is not necessarily through severe austerities or penances. So, in fact, it's by following in the footsteps of devotees who are in direct relationship with Krishna. So we're hearing about this extraordinary reasoning process that Nanda Maharaj engages in. So one can follow in those kind of footsteps because he's in direct relationship with Krishna. And the devotional service, anything that even on a simple level that one performs, it's actually within the internal energy of Krishna. It means it's on a spiritual plane, it's spiritual energy. You are uplifted from regular material functioning. And so engaging in devotional service and taking to the consciousness of Krishna means that one becomes sinless automatically because of the purity and potency of devotional service. So it means that everything one starts to do is very pure and perfect. So yeah, so that was coming particularly from the Bhagavad Gita verse following on the one that Nanda Maharaj had drawn from. So the verse is 1520 that I'm drawing the second section from. If there's any thought on this subject matter, this is where I've come to in understanding Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on these verses. Oh, microphone over there? Okay.
Why do we think that, who was the guy that was convincing Krishna's dad that Krishna is actually many sons and fathers? What was his
Oh,
name?
his name is Uddhava.
Uddhava.
And he has been sent by Krishna to go to Vraja, where Krishna's parents are, in order to sort of bring them some message from Krishna or comfort them in some way.
So to comfort him, so, wow. Wow, okay. That's so many layers um, of love. So I'm thinking, why does he say, well, Krishna is many sons, and if that's a comfort? Because this entire time I'm like, well, why is he saying this to his father?
Yes, that's. I specifically highlighted that particular statement. He made various other statements too. But indeed, you'd think it can hardly be comforting to say to Nanda Maharaj, the father of Krishna, who's seen Krishna as his son, actually, he's the son of many. In fact, he's the father and mother of many.
Yes.
Not only the son, but he's the father of many.
Yes.
He's the mother of many. Yes.
Yes.
So the question you're asking is appropriate. How on earth can that be comforting? Well, there's different moods of devotional service. And Nanda Maharaj, as I was explaining, has a parental mood towards Krishna. Uddhava doesn't have that mood. His mood is more one of seeing Krishna as I guess, a friend, and he is also hasn't come because there's gradations of love, devotional love. He's doesn't have that level of intimacy with Krishna that Nanda Maharaj has. So he can actually understand Krishna, from the scriptural standpoint. He's actually the super soul in the hearts of many. Therefore, as the super soul, he's playing a role in the lives of many. Sometimes as a mother, sometimes as a father or the son. It's mostly that his own devotional love doesn't have that level of intimacy in relation to Krishna. But in terms of his saying something that, one could say isn't comforting, Nanda Maharaj knows all of the scriptures. And I think that's what I was trying to highlight, that automatically all this knowledge is there by serving Krishna. So Nanda Maharaj knows all of these things. And in fact, he even argues that he's understood that Krishna is Narayan. But it doesn't change how he feels and how he sees Krishna.
Yeah.
So by hearing Uddhava, he can acknowledge. He says, indeed. So it's not that it's going to disturb him. He understands it. He knows all of that. But it doesn't shift him from the level of intimate love that he has in relation to Krishna.
Yes, that makes so much sense. Because you're right, even the comforting part, it's like, it is comforting to know that Krishna is, still everywhere and other parents and, and then he can still hold on to his, his own personal parental relationship.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Yes, quite extraordinary that Krishna can actually fulfill the desire of the devotee in the mood that the devotee wants to relate to him. And he can do it to innumerable living entities.
Yes.
Yeah, but it doesn't change the very individual nature of the relationship with him. Yes.
Powerful, yeah.
Very extraordinary,
Yes.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Masaji, thank you for your question, your class. My question is regarding what you said about Prabhupada, like when you were in your Krishna consciousness early days, many devotees would do a raw food diet, and He was like, it's not necessary to do so many difficult austerities, whatever is recommended. And so we see, and just like Nanda Maharaj, he was putting the argument that, I'm not an illusion. I know I'm Krishna's father. And so sometimes we also feel the same way. I'm not an illusion, you're an illusion. So sometimes we debate with each other and we say what Prabhupada recommends, but we see that, this is causes a lot of tension between devotees when they say Prabhupada said this, and then somebody may say, no, Prabhupada said this. But we see a doctor, Bhaktisiddhanta gave the example that a physician, he doesn't have one medicine for everyone. There's many prescriptions. So my question is that how can we prevent ourselves or develop the humility that I'm not the enlightened one and I don't know everything, that Srila Prabhupada, he's recommended so many things for so many people, and just because he recommends something for one person doesn't mean it's universal. And so I don't know if my question was clear, but maybe you collaborate on this topic that causes tension between devotees all the time.
Yeah, you were highlighting that there may be an underlying belief, and that underlying belief may be, I know quite a lot. And somebody else may be holding a similar belief, and I guess you were highlighting that, tension happens in interrelationships between devotees, which I guess you were hinting might rest with this problematic belief, because each person is still drawing on the scriptures and may have a perfectly good argument. But there's some tension, and the tension is, and I think you kind of pointed to the answer, that one is still under the sway of the material energy. And that being under the sway of material energy, it happens if one is a little bit slack in one's sadhana practices. So, maybe he's not chanting attentively or isn't being very careful with doing one's service with thought and a lot of care. It's being very conscious in the services one is performing, and being very attuned to making the right decisions in different circumstances, because almost every service involves others. And when one is dealing with others, it means you're dealing with belief systems, mentalities, and being able to negotiate service in the company of others can be a delicate thing. And the fundamental belief that you were hinting at is seeing oneself a little bit in a sort of more superior position. That's what you were hinting at. And it's true that it requires introspection and reflection. I mean, a lot of what I was talking about was Nanda Maharaj reflecting and making distinctions. So in one's own service, one can actually think, is this a person that it's wise to engage in dialogue with? Some persons, it's better to just give encouragement that they're doing some service. Other persons that are more like peers, one can actually engage in dialogue with. Like, there's this interesting argument on this point presented by Srila Prabhupada in this way, and one's peer may say, well, I would agree with that, but then there's also this point. So it's been very selective in where you're going to tap into the mentality and the belief system of another person. And in some cases, it's often best to just do it very much on the external level. Okay, you can beat this drum and not much more. With somebody else, one may have a discussion on, the means to, or the way to perform devotional service. Srila Prabhupada says is to approach something very cautiously, and then the other person will say whatever. So again, tapping into the mentality of a person, being very selective, who you're going and how deep you're going to go. It's a kind of protection for oneself, because one also has one's belief systems, and you don't want to mismatch who you're dialoguing with. So that's just a thought. Thank you. Subal, you were going to say something. I think Subal had some thought. Or do you want to say it in your words, because it may expand things? You okay? All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much for your kind attention.